Hello and welcome to the another insightful episode of Entrepreneurs Cafe. In today's episode, we are going to do a deep dive into fintech and cross-border payments with Rishabh Goel. But before we get into that, if you are listening for this episode for the first time, please subscribe to our YouTube channel or rate us on your favorite podcasting platform. Rishabh has a solid background in fintech and cross-border payments, and he is currently building Dodo Payments from India. Dodo Payments is a merchants of record system. We'll get more into details about what it does and what is the industry all about. Welcome to the show, Rishabh.
Thank you so much for having me, Nikunj. I'm very excited to speak more about my journey. If it could be of value to your audience, nothing like it.
So, Rishabh, let's start from your educational background. I see that you have studied from BITS Pilani and then you went on to London Business School. So, tell us about your experiences studying these prestigious institutes and how it formed your mindset about entrepreneurship and fintech or finance as a domain.
Yeah, for sure. So, by the way, I'm a second generation Bitsin. My dad also into Bits. So, in the house, it was always kind of clear that I'll do engineering, ideally Bits or IT. Thankfully, got into Bits. I was one of the rare ones who, at that point of time, chose Goa campus. One of my dad's biggest regrets because he got really excited. Oh, my son's going to Bits, show me all the Oscars and all. But it's just that I felt Goa had better infrastructure, new labs, etc. Seemed like a better campus as well, more security. And I think the one thing that really stands out about BITS is they really treat you as adults. So there is no concept of attendance. You do have surprise guests, tutorials, tuts, you call them, but there's no attendance per se. You're not persecuted because you don't have certain attendance. You're treated as adults. They respect you. They give you boundary, and that really encourages you to, start thinking on your own. And when you develop that mindset, it becomes very easy to start thinking about, okay, there's so many problems in the world. I am an adult. What can I do towards solving these problems and creating value for the society per se? So that is one thing I really took away from BITS, and I continue seeing this in the upcoming graduates from BITS across campuses. That is something that highlights and stands out compared to graduates from other universities. Now, coming to why LBS, for me, it was fairly straightforward decision. Till then, I'd been lucky to travel a bit. My dad was posted in the Middle East for some time, so I spent some time abroad for my summer vacations. Folks from different nationalities, and I somehow felt very comfortable in different cultures. At one point of time, I decided that I want to build a career and a life where I'm at the intersection of different geographies, cultures, and markets, which is actually, thankfully, I've been able to live through, and I'll discuss that later. LBS is like at my time, we had 100 plus nationalities on campus, and I think it's the only campus that had that. We got a Guinness World Book record for like most number of nationalities doing some XYZ. So it's just a fantastic place for you to, step into London, which was at least at back then the capital of the world culturally and financially. And when I went there, typically in B school, you have three career outcomes that you look at. First is consulting, second is finance, and third is tech. Within tech, which is what excited me given how much tech was booming in India, fintech seemed a very obvious choice. And this is pre-Brexit, right? So before Brexit, what happened was the UK had this thing called the financial passport. So with this financial passport, if you get a license in the UK, you could do all financial activities across Europe. So people would just set up something in UK. FCA is a regulatory body in UK, very fintech friendly. UK, London was the financial headquarters of the world for the longest time. So it just made a lot of sense for fintech to evolve here. My bet was fintech would be epicentered at London. Did not turn out because of Brexit and multiple other reasons. But I got the opportunity to work at Wise. This was back in 2015. It was called TransferWise back in the day. I found the model very exciting because it was essentially Hawala, but legit because we get KYC. Okay, Hawala doesn't have KYC. This is proper KYC, proper documentation. And I joined at a time when India was really booming for the company. They recently launched US with a US license. A lot of Indian NRIs working in banks, sending money back to their families in India, were savvy enough to look at digital options. TransferWise came up. So get a lot of product marketing work there. I worked directly with the first PM. And just a fantastic place to be groomed as your first career out of B school. And And then I got an opportunity to work at another company called Prodigy Finance, which is career abroad education loans. Joined that, first set up their India office, India market, and then actually traveled to multiple countries for emerging markets. So went to LATAM, set up office in Brazil, helped set that up, traveled to Hong Kong, traveled to South Africa, Middle East, etc. And at one point of time, our team had folks from 6 countries. So that was pretty exciting. Built a very large loan book. And yeah, after that, I had spent around 5, 6 years working in different fintech companies. And I felt, okay, this is the time to, start, launch something of my own. I had a couple of ideas. I started them around Jan of 2020, horrid time with COVID and everything. So I just took a break. Then I joined like a couple of US and Indian companies, but again in cross border. First one was Solitix, which is in regulatory tech. So we would actually help banks, especially in the Middle East, onboard regulatory compliance solutions. So Dubai had slipped into the FATF gray list. FATF is this organization that takes care of money laundering, terrorism, etc. So we were basically implementing solutions to comply with FATF. And then my most recent stint before this was at Bazaar. So we were helping Indian brands and factories sell in the West. Worked directly with an amazing entrepreneur as an EIR. Learned, I would say, it was a refresher in what entrepreneurship should be, and got the founder's blessing to go launch something on my own, which is why I'm here.
So your Wise experience, I remember back in time when it was called TransferWise, and I was running a company here in India, and we had to get one payment from UK, and then I looked around multiple options, and so much expensive and like very cumbersome onboarding process, and then I stumbled upon TransferWise. I opened up account. It was very quick, and then within 3 4 days we were able to get the payment here. So always admire them for the kind of innovation that they are doing fintech space. So we'll talk about that. First, I want to know more about like your experience at LBS. Like you mentioned that 100 plus nationalities, like so much diversity, and you get to learn a lot of cultures about other cultures. So how did it shape your mindset about entrepreneurship, understanding about like cross border payments, and overall like what was it like to like gain from this experience?
So the key insight, actually, I borrowed this from someone else who went to another B school, is the only task of a B school is to give you the confidence that you can go and conquer anything. That is the main objective of B school. That is what every B school gives you, that you are part of this elite cohort, that you got selected, and you got rigorous training, mentored and coached by some of the best in the business. And your alumni base is so strong that no matter what you want to do, you want to achieve, you want to build, you can go and build that. That is, in my opinion, the true objective of a B school. That is what Blanket Business School does phenomenally well. And again, the choice of LBS, right? It is truly global. So we had, like, I was part of study groups where I had a Chinese, I had an Italian, I had an American, and someone from Peru. So that sort of geographic mix, culture mix is just unmatched. Moreover, the school, did a lot of interesting free trips. So we went to Shanghai and Hangzhou, visited Alibaba headquarters, saw, how China's manufacturing boom is happening. This was back in the day, 2015. So that was super exciting. Traveled to Germany, Munich, visited BMW and a BMW Man Group, saw how they work, how they do marketing, saw the factory of Man Groups, how the trucks are built. Some of us choose this, or they could go to Hermes. Hermes is one of the most renowned luxury brands, and there was a workshop on how to create bags. Back then, I had no idea about luxury. If I'd known, I would have probably picked that instead of BMW. But I did a trip to Paris, and some of us also went to Silicon Valley. So just, the sheer exposure you get at a B school on a geographic level is just beyond your wildest imagination. But still, I'm amazed at the experiences I had. And the experiences, importantly, don't stop at school. They stay with you. So why? Because you have a strong alumni base. Since I've graduated, I've traveled to like 20 plus countries. I've done over 35 plus. So more often than not, I'll go wherever I plan to go. I'll ask a friend who's a local there, and I'll meet them and, get all the local tips. One of the most interesting incidents that happened with me was traveling to Turkey, and one of my good friends from LBS was in Istanbul. He was going to pick me up. He did come to pick me up at the airport, but it coincided with a local coup happening. The army was trying to overthrow the government, and basically this chap, Hassan, shout out, he stood ground while all the tanks were going besides him and waited for more than 2 hours for me to go out of the airport, meet me, and then it was a 30-minute drive for him from his home to airport, but took us 4 hours to go back. There's just a kind of friends, networks, connections you make globally at a B school is just unmatched. And LBS especially because LBS emphasizes a lot on geographic and cultural diversity.
Definitely, traveling is like one of the most exciting activities, and then the exposure and experiences that you get are like unmatched. I've been to like 14 plus countries myself. I've done like a month long road trip in Europe, and that
Oh,
too when
nice.
the football World Cup was on. So we have seen some of the matches with in the public places where they set up a large screen, and then you have a crowd cheering for different teams because of the diversity. Like everyone would be working cheering up for the different teams, and because of like similar experiences, the knowledge, the connections that you get, exposure that you get is extremely important, and it definitely helps in business aspects that you learn about like nitty gritties of those cultures, and then when you try to build a global business, when you reach out to those people, you definitely know something about that culture. So it helps in like at least like opening conversation. You know some of the bits, so it becomes a good icebreaker.
Correct. So in that, just to add there, right? Like best network is unparalleled because in any tech company, you'll find a Bitsin who will help you through the ropes, be it understanding the business or making introduction. The LBS network is fantastic because no matter which jurisdiction or country you have to go build a business in, I know I can just go ask for help, put an email out to the community or join the local WhatsApp group and I'll be sorted. That level of network gives you a lot of confidence that I have people with me who will help me no matter what.
Now let's talk about your experience at Wise. I think you mentioned that you worked with the first PM at Wise. What was that experience like?
It was fantastic. I did not know much about product management, even tech companies much. This was back in 2015. But PM was not the thing that it is now that everybody aspires to and is like commonly well understood. The role was still getting defined back then. But Hendrik was fantastic, great mentor. For majority of the time, he was actually in the US. We were just working remotely. I would go to the UK office, London office. Yeah, that was interesting. The culture also in Wise, I think they did some things very differently compared to what I've seen in other organizations. But the sheer relentless focus on execution and success and excellence is what makes what sets them apart. Payments, fintech, finance, they're very tricky. There's so much regulation, so much compliance. To solve for it in such a beautiful, neat fashion takes a lot of effort.
So, what would you say your biggest learning or takeaway from your Wise experience?
So I learned a lot about positioning. With us back then, positioning was becoming a big challenge, and that's simply because of how we would price it. We would have mid-market rates, but we would charge a fee, while everybody would make it free but have their own rates. And not everybody intuitively understood that. And also it was tough, right? Because rates keep changing up and down between a day. So that, building that awareness and education was important. I think Indians cared more about the final INR amount, not so much about the philosophy on how you price models. In the UK and Europe, they had a big thing on no hidden fee, etc. But Indians are more value conscious. They're like, I just want INR amount. I don't care how you price it. What is the bank mein kitna paisa hai? I want to know how much INR hits my account to my parents' account, to be precise. I think that took some time for the company also to adjust. So that was one. Second was in terms of CX. Basically, I pushed the team a bit to understand that they basically expect something equivalent to a Domino's delivery tracker, which today would be like a Swiggy or Zomato delivery tracker, because that builds a lot of transparency and trust. So that was like that implementation helped, our NPS scores and everything across the board, not just India. And third was, the referral system that we had where first transaction was free and that Indians were just able to find ways to game that. So just taming that was was a very tough challenge, honestly. They had been working for this on this challenge for a few months before I joined, and thankfully you were able to address it.
From there, you moved to Prodigy Finance, right? And there, your role was international growth and expansion. So, what kind of areas did you mainly focus on?
So I did mainly growth across different geographies. So this was effectively looking at like 40 plus major countries in emerging markets. The business model was helping international students study at top universities. Top universities, fortunately or unfortunately, are concentrated in the West. So essentially, you're helping emerging market students study at top universities of OECD countries, effectively speaking. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun. I joined them to lead their growth in India. I set up their India presence, India market India office, then got involved in other markets, so travel to multiple jurisdictions, get a lot of activities. I think the most interesting part for me was just being involved in so many parts of the business, wherein one of them was a highlight. As a UK based company, we have a lending license in UK. So the nuance here is if you're sitting in India, so in Nikunj, and you're going thinking of going abroad, I as a Prodigy, employee cannot, do direct sales to you because an RBI can construe that the loan was originated in India, which means two things. First of all, you have to file all the taxes and everything here. But more importantly, you need a lending license in India. Okay, that's super challenging. So you had a lot of regulations in terms of what marketing and sales efforts you could do from country to country. And it was challenging, frustrating, but yet rewarding on how you can interpret the law and just, push your boundaries on what you can and cannot do while staying within the fold of legal action.
So, what did you find interesting about like UK finance regulations and India finance regulations?
I am not the best person to answer this honestly, but and there are people who know this way better than me. But my takeaway is the UK fintech organization FCA is very fintech friendly. They had sandboxes for all types of different models. There's a lot of continuity in decision making and policy. I think with RBI, I did not have any exposure in terms of licenses, etc. My exposure was in terms of how they interpret the law, and in that way, they are very clear on defending the interests of India and its citizens. That rightfully correct. That if you are selling the loan in India, if you're doing one-to-one conversations, explaining the loan terms, if the whole sales process happens in India, then you need to be bound by Indian law, which is a very good stance for RBI to have.
And then you switched to a sales and BD role in Solitex Partners. So how did that transition happen? Like most of the times, like you started very adjacent to product roles and growth roles, and then now you are in a sales and BD roles. How did that transition happen?
So it wasn't that tough because even in growth, like depends, growth and PMM, I think are very vague words. They mean different things in different organizations and different departments. Prodigy Finance, growth meant a lot of partnerships because again, we were bound by a lot of things we couldn't do. So we would partner with folks who would do it for us or with us. So partnerships were very important at Prodigy. And or rather, after I joined Solitex after a few months break, and the thought process was I want to learn more about enterprise sales because I was doing sales of 2 crores plus to retail individuals. But can I flip the game? Can I, start doing large enterprise sales to large organizations? And what is that journey like? What is that decision? That's a different game altogether because you have something called RFPs, requests for proposals. You need to create those proposals. But in the meanwhile, you also need to be friendly with the decision makers. So they review your RFPs, and give it just as it deserves, craft them, build relationships. So I did that for over a year. That was a time also coincided with UAE slipping in the FATF grey list. So an amazing time to implement AML, transaction monitoring, transaction screening solutions in that Gulf region.
So let's come to Dodo Payments. First, start with the names. Like, how did the name Dodo Payments come up?
Yeah, so look, we wanted a name that's catchy and easy for anybody in the world to, understand. We are building a global product from day zero, so that has been very clear for us. And why Dodo? I think we were just brainstorming names. Ayush and Ayush is my co-founder. So with Ayush, we had a preference for a four-letter name. I just remember that over New Year's, I went to this island called Reunion, which is next to Mauritius, and basically they have a local beer, which is a French name. Nobody can pronounce it. Réunion is a French territory, technically. It's still part of France. We pay in euros, but nobody could pronounce a beer brand's name. So the logo had Dodo on it. You would just say, Dodo, let's have a Dodo. Can you give me a Dodo? I would like to have a Dodo. And met folks from all over the world. And the beer Dodo became like a reason and a cause for celebration of different cultures in that vacation spot. So I felt, okay, yeah, Dodo is something that anybody and everybody across the world understands. The logo is very easy to associate with. And that's how, honestly, the term came up. And we've written a thread on this. Moreover, there are nuances that we can build on, like Dodo as a bird in Mauritius. Basically, got extinct because it couldn't keep up with global trade. As global trade happened, it brought new pests, it brought new diseases. The bird was so comfortable in its own cocoon on Mauritius that it just couldn't adapt, got extinct. Similarly, we feel that, with a lot of businesses, they've been in their own cocoons, relaxing in their own markets. But with technology, You'll have more and more businesses becoming truly global and location agnostic. So you cannot afford to be comfortable in your own market. You have to think globally, and you also have to compete with global markets or global competitors in your markets.
Right. So name inspired from a beer. That is an interesting story. So let's break down merchants of record for our audience. Like what does it do? Like why it is needed? What kind of businesses use it and why they use it?
So, first of all, let's accept that digital businesses are going to boom. In fact, they are booming. And these businesses are default global. That means entrepreneurs can be from anywhere in the world and their customers will be from all over the world. And for these entrepreneurs, collecting payments from their customers should be very straightforward. Unfortunately, it's not today. With digital businesses, is a trend that people are selling more products, less services. The moment it's a product, you want to collect payments via payment gateway because it makes life simple. Some 10, 30 reasons I can list: automatic reconciliation, triggers, events, etc. Now, when you are working with a payment gateway, you ideally want to offer an optimized payment experience to your customer, because the last thing you want is your customer loves your product, found you through a like customer acquisition journey, loved your product, resonated with the value prop, decided to build an intent, and it goes to purchase. At the checkout stage, drops off because either it is not convenient to pay or the payment method is failing. And these two challenges are very common with international transactions if you're using a PG of your home country. So India is the largest developer base and we are building tech products for the global audience. But we are stuck with PGs in India and we cannot onboard PGs in US, UK, Europe because jurisdiction wise or legally we are based in India. Stripe US was asking for an EIN number, which is their EIN or SSN, which is their equivalent of PAN or GST. We don't have that, so they cannot onboard you. So their customer, if you launch something and use an Indian payment gateway, your US customer is paying in INR on a payment gateway that they are not comfortable with through a payment method which they don't have, or they might want to pay by Apple Pay link, which is not present. And in card transactions, more than 30 to 40% transactions fail. So this is a problem. You're basically losing out on revenue. So what we come and say is, ideally, you should be showing payment gateway of your customer's jurisdiction. Now, how do you do that? You cannot do it. That is where a merchant of record comes in. We go and integrate with payment gateways across the world, starting with the top markets. In our beta, we have US and India, and for public, we have UK and Europe as well. So by the time we have public in Jan, US, UK, Europe, you will be having localized payments with local payment methods and local success rates of 99% plus. So you're not going to lose revenue just because it is inconvenient for the customer to pay or it is, the transaction is failing. So that's the first problem. Now, while we solve this problem, another problem comes up, which is that if you're selling internationally, you are subject to sales tax, VAT, or GST. Now, these taxes are called consumption taxes, and consumption taxes are defined by the jurisdiction or the law of where the product is consumed. So, if your product you're selling from India, but a customer is in US or UK or Europe, then the law of that country applies, not Indian GST. You will go and tell Indian GST Council, this is international income, I'm exempt from GST, but you have to collect and remit sales tax, VAT, or GST as per a customer's jurisdiction. For a lot of businesses, if I have customers from 20 plus countries, it becomes extremely painful and extremely expensive because now I have to get experts, tax experts from each country, go file my own, actually not even file, first create my tax ID and then do monthly, quarterly or semi-annual filing. Very expensive affair and not required. And the sad part is the cost of non-compliance is very high. If you don't do this, you'll be getting fines. Okay, and the fines are obscene. So this is the second problem again that gets absorbed by merchant of record. The third problem we saw is that people are going and integrating 10, 15 tools. Okay, here's a payment gateway. Then you go integrate a billing solution like ChargeBee or Metronome. You integrate with a tax collection. It just collects tax. It doesn't remit. Then you have to go integrate with fraud solution, a churn solution, a purchasing power parity solution, etc., etc. And then you're just paying so much money in different tools and making sure the system works, which is essentially broken because they're just duct taping everything. So essentially what a merchant of record does, and we do at Dodo Payments, is come to us, onboard us. It's simple, straightforward, less than a day. And with that, your global payments are optimized and all the tools required to collect payments efficiently are inbuilt.
So in in layman terms, like if I run a D2C business and I sell internationally, so rather than like going for a typical payment gateway like Razorpay or Stripe, I would come to you and then you would take care of not just the payments but also the local compliances, taxes, and
So
billing as well.
there are merchant of records for e-commerce. So they make sure that local invoicing is correct, local payments are enabled. So for example, if you're selling in Middle East, there's a very popular BNPL method called Cabby. And if you sell anything above 10,000 rupees equivalent, you want to have Cabby because that is how people feel comfortable and your revenue will go 150, 170% up. Okay, basically 1.7x. That's what, we have talked to customers and learned. You want to show that. A true merchant of record for e-commerce will also have, logistics inbuilt. It will have all the customs and everything inbuilt. We are not doing e-commerce today. We are focused on digital products. If you were to take your example, everything would be inbuilt. You just get an order on the website and then the merchant of record would take care of everything else.
And in that case, like billing would happen on whose name, right? It will be my entity or like the merchants of records entity will bill the customer and then I'll just get the payout from the
So there are
merchant.
two invoices. One is by the merchant of record because they are the official merchant on record. And then you also give an invoice. So the example I keep giving people is think of your favorite electronics store, offline store. So say Chroma. Okay. Chroma has laptops from Apple, HP, Lenovo, Dell, etc. Now, when you purchase from Chroma, you get an invoice from Chroma because the transaction you get was with Chroma. But the laptop manufacturer will also give you an invoice, will give you a warranty and everything. So the way merchant of record is defined is we are responsible for tier one support. Tier one support means payments, refunds, chargebacks, and disputes. That is it. And invoices. Those are the five things we take care of. Okay, that is it. Everything else is done by the customer, or rather the merchant in this case, who are customers.
And like why building a merchants of records is very difficult because I think in India right now not so many options are there, right? Versus if you see payment gateways, there are multiple options, and a lot of SaaS companies or digital product companies usually prefer to register in US just to make sure that the billing is sorted, right? So why is it difficult to build merchants of record software from India?
Actually, I don't think it's difficult that it's from India per se, but to give more context, look, merchant of record is an abstraction on top of payment gateways. You cannot build a merchant of record solution until you have good payment gateways built. Okay, which is why merchant of records are becoming popular now. Till now, you could not have payment gateways on top of which merchant of records could sit and build a product. Okay, this is like a standard question, like why now? Because you now have payment gateways across the world where you can build on top of it. So that's part A. Second is, nonetheless, in my opinion, merchant record is not the most straightforward product because you have a lot of compliances and money management to figure out. You are dealing with payment gateways, payout partners across, at scale, we expect to do this like 50 to 100 countries. Figuring that out is incredibly complex. Even if we start with two countries, US and India, we still have to manage tax in 180 plus countries because tax is consumption based, even if we don't have an entity. Managing money movement across all of this is challenging. Making sure all of your partners are happy with you, all the regulators are okay with you is a very heavy proactive engagement where you proactively share a lot of information with them to make sure they're comfortable with the model. So it's a model where I don't feel that's the most straightforward to execute. Our bet is that this is a model that requires some level of expertise in terms of understanding the space as well as having built something before. And that's why Ayush and I think we are a good fit because Ayush built a global payments cap in his previous startup, which he exited and which he exited to for his investors. And for me, I spent 10 years in the space, so I have like some understanding.
So, if you can walk us through your journey so far building Dodo payments, like what sort of planning did you do? How did you execute building the entire system? That would be great.
I think around September last year, started tinkering with the idea and just going to the depth of how it actually works. I met Ayush in January, and for the first 2 months, we were just building comfort with the business model. What is it? What does it mean? What does it mean on day zero? What does it mean at scale? What are the challenges? Just figuring out and doing a market study. I think for us, we never had a question of TAM because my God, the TAM is massive in cross-border payments. That was never a question at all. The question was, could we execute this and are we the right people? So spent substantial time on this. You wouldn't want to waste 5 years realizing you're not the right person for this. So spend 2, 3 months, then get a lot of customer validation. talk to as many folks as possible. And by April end, we had more than 100 people on our waitlist. This was before we had a website, before we had anything. This was just us going, reaching out to people who had problems, talking to them and validating they had a problem, and only them inviting to sign up for waitlist. So once we hit that number, we were reasonably confident, okay, we are not only the right people, but this is a large camp, right problem to solve. And we sort of understand the initial acquisition journey. And there are a bunch of other questions as why now, what is it, moat, etc. Those are questions that you need to know very well when you go fundraise, because those are the questions that your investors will also be interested in. And mostly it's the function of how deeply you understand your business, your customer, and your model, the actual business model that you're building. Once we had the clarity, we raised money, and then once that was out of the picture, we started, scoping out the product. The first step was building a lot of partnerships. And then once we were able to make significant headroom there, we finally started writing our code in mid-August. One thing we're very clear on is don't write code that is not the blocker. The blocker is everything else. You understand the business. This is the type of business, again, we realize can't be bootstrap, has to be venture built. So can we build this? Can we get venture capital? So we got that. Then the other blocker was, will people work with us? So we got that close. And only then we decided to, write code. And now we are, November is when we're launching a beta.
So I think we have done a pretty good job of creating awareness around this, and I've seen you active on Reddit. I've seen you active on Twitter, talking about the problem, talking about the solutions, and then we are building Dodo payments. So how are you planning to build the whole marketing engine for this?
Good question. We still haven't figured out. It's an evolving journey. But broadly speaking, in terms of marketing, the first thing you need to know is who is your customer, or who is your customer today. For us, our customer today is an indie hacker or early stage founder who is building their product, does not understand payments much, knows that international payments is a problem, and is looking for a solution, actively or passively. And these folks spend a lot of time on Twitter, Reddit, and LinkedIn. That is why we also spend our time on Reddit, Twitter, and LinkedIn talking about the problem statement. And the objective is not to pitch Dodo payments, but explain to them how deeply we understand the problem. And these are the potential solutions wherein we could be one of them. There are in fact other solutions as well. You can go and set up a US entity, but then again, it has its own complications and has a 3 to 4 month long journey, and you pay a lot of extra taxes. So point being is, just in terms of marketing right now, this is how we describe GKM also, by the way, internally. GKM is go to market. It has three things: your customer, your channels, and your messaging. Be sharp on all three, and you should be seeing success.
One thing that you mentioned, right? A lot of folks go about registering entity in US, right? And in my circles, like I talk to a lot of startup founders, when they plan a building like a global product, they always think that the easiest way to go about payments is to register an US entity and just sign up on Stripe, and then everything else gets taken care of. So do you think that motion is changing, and with Dodo payments in picture, do you think like more and more people will remain register in India and then do global payments?
It's yes and no. And yes and no, the answer has nothing to do with us. It has to do with the regulations, honestly. Our job is not about that, should you set up an entity in India or not. We tell you set up wherever an entity, wherever you want. It's just that your non-international revenue can come through us because we make life easy. We also take care of compliances and all the other tools. So we're not at all encouraging or discouraging you from setting entities in certain jurisdictions. But what our job is also tell you the reality of setting up international entities. From a regulatory point of view, RBI simply does not like it. And there's ample evidence, because essentially there's a concept called round tripping, wherein you have money in India. This money could be black, or it could have, I don't know if it's white or not, but it has no trail. Given that this money has no trail, you can now just route this money to your international entity, and then you can start issuing invoices, real or disingenuous, and start sending money to India. Now, two things happen because of this round tripping. First of all is the money has now gotten legitimized, which probably was not legitimate in the original place. I'm not saying this is the case for everyone, but this is what can happen and used to happen at scale that you folks would not be aware, I'm assuming, the community, because you don't get into this side of the business. The first point is your black money or illegitimate money becomes legitimized, which is a problem. The second problem again is this is actually Indian money which is getting routed, and you're avoiding GST on it. Both of these things the government does not like. So now what the government, I think not even the government, the RBI They are both different entities, the different bodies. So RBI has mandated that you cannot directly own significant stakes in an international entity. So, and nor is it advisable to pay yourself directly from an international entity. So now essentially setting up an international entity is colloquially called a sandwich structure. Why is it a sandwich? Because you cannot directly own shares there. The roundabout way is you set up your own LLP, which is your limited partnership, and the LLP goes and acquires shares. Each LLP transaction is called a ODI transaction, which is the reverse of FDI because it's an overseas direct investment. This transaction is approved by RBI. Okay, even if it's a $25 transaction, they'll still approve it. It requires approval, and if you don't take this approval for this transaction or pay through a proper AD bank, then it is a crime, which is essentially what you do if you pay to a Stripe, Atlas, Tula, or any of those incorporation agencies. So at least Stripe, Atlas is fixed care FAQs. I'm not sure about the others. So that's the first part. So that's the top part of the sandwich, your top part. Now the bottom one is RBI again does not like when you pay yourself directly from an international. So you now have to set up an Indian subsidiary. The Indian subsidiary pays you out. And what the RBI says is this Indian objective should be to create IP for the parent company with wherever it is. Now they believe if you're creating IP, then it has to be sold like a profit. So you have to sell it at cost plus certain markup. And there are industry benchmarks. For a company like TCS, Infosys, there are certain benchmarks. For startups, there's a certain benchmark. So in this, you have to not only pay GST, you also have to pay income tax. So this is the sandwich structure. This takes easily 3 to 5 months to set up, takes a lot of money, but it is not even about the upfront expenditure. It's about the fact that you have to now maintain 3 different entities. If you have other co-founders, add the number of co-founders. You have to maintain these entities, you have to maintain their accounting, bookkeeping, and you have to pay extra taxes in India through your subsidiary. It's just too painful. I would not advise it to any entrepreneur, especially if you have not raised significant capital / you have not raised significant revenue. I would not advise it.
It becomes very complex, like when you get into the details of like registering different entities. Obviously the more number of entities and geographies, then problems increase. So it's better to like go with a simpler solution, merchants of record rule.
We are doing this, by the way. We built this exact same thing. I lived through the pain. It is painful because the more entities you have, and our job is to build such a complex network of entities globally that you never have to do this. You can just piggy bank on our network. That is our ambition.
Tell me about your interactions with initial set of customers. Any interesting insights or stories that came up from those conversations?
Interesting insights. I think one thing is very interesting how so many college kids set up their own micro SaaS and are like earning enough money to not just pay off their education, but also send some money back to their homes. That I found really impressive. They have this work ethic that look, my parents took care of me. Now that I have a laptop with me, can I make some money from this laptop? And they're actually going and doing it. So that's something I really appreciated. That's been one. Second is we actually have signups from 52 countries, and it's just been amazing. For each sign up, we make sure we have a conversation with them. It's just been amazing how, even during my previous organizations, one thing I always observed was humans are very similar. We all have our own like same needs. We all want to, make more money. We want simpler lives. We want less stress. It's just that culturally some things come across in a different way, but essentially our needs, wants are very similar. And that again gets validated to Dodo payments because people from 50 countries, it's a very similar problem statement. I want to collect payments internationally. I want it simple. I don't want to break the law. I don't want to do tech integrations all the time. How do I go about it?
So, what is your perspective on the indie hacking? Like the trend is growing. A lot of people are now preferring to like work independently, build micro SaaS products. How do you see this trend going forward?
So I'm overall very bullish on the trend because so if you look at the history of SaaS, right? SaaS basically grew against the previous trend of on-prem. So on-prem was you would have servers on premises. So any company would have to first invest in servers. They would be freaking expensive. You invest in the servers, you install, software into those servers, and then you run a business, which meant you had a significant upfront cost. You could not update your systems frequently, and there are potentially security breaches as well. And which is where your cloud came in, because with SaaS was like, okay, you just pay me as a service. You pay me every month or every year. You don't make a lot of investment upfront, so that just make a lot of financial sense. Moreover, I constantly keep upgrading my features, my pricing, so you benefit from there as well. So it was inherently a better business model. Now with AI, I again see a similar disruption where to build a SaaS, it takes a lot of time and resources, which is why SaaS products are often priced high. A lot of SaaS are only applicable for enterprise levels because those are the only ones who can afford these SaaS solutions. But with AI, two things will happen. First of all, the cost of SaaS will dramatically go down. So a lot of enterprise solutions will now be available to humans, will now be available to individuals. Okay, not just companies. That's one. Second is I see, the speed of building AI, going up rapidly. So I would say I would be very bullish on this. Where if you have the right distribution, a solo person can rake in 1 million plus if you hit the right product, the right use case. But there are mainly two challenges that I see for anybody who's part of the community. First of all, is very frothy. You still don't know what works, what doesn't work. And by the time it settles down, the winners will be sort of clear. So you have to jump now, figure out and navigate your way through this frothiness. And the second is distribution is becoming even more important because if you look at the indie hacker community, you realize some 15 people have built the same product. How will your product win? If everybody is using the same AI at the back end, then it is something else. And in my bet, that will be distribution.
Definitely. I think distribution is a key in if you're trying to do indie hacking, like always have to build the audience first. And because of the trend is growing nowadays, building public and indie hacking, people are randomly building following. But it's not like these are not the people who would pay for your product, right? So you have to build a meaningful community of people who would resonate with the problem that you are solving and then would be willing to pay for it.
In fact, I'll give unsolicited advice to the indie hacking community. I've talked to like so many of you. Just spend more time outside of Twitter because your actual customers are more likely to be outside of Twitter. In fact, the indie hackers that I see making like substantial money tend to make money from folks who are outside of Twitter.
So earlier you mentioned that you have received like beta access requests from 52 countries. So becoming like being a payment like merchants of record solution, you're collecting payments on behalf of somebody. Trust becomes a very solid factor, right? So how do you build for trust? Like how do you ensure that people trust what you're building and then they sign up and then that trust continues?
I think that's a question we're still answering, to be really honest. And it's the most important question for any fintech product or finance product, for example. Why are banks so flush with, like Quick Decor, forget the PSUs, like any private bank? They make an effort. They make an effort to look great. The appearances matter. But besides, if you ignore all of that, broadly trust for a payments company comes from three things. First of all is does the product work? You don't want your payments to fail because of your payment solution. Okay. Not it is not my fault, it's because of a payment solution didn't work, which sadly is happening today. But hopefully we'll be fixing it for the community very soon. So the product should actually work. The second is CX, customer success. And in here, CX is very broad. So it includes stuff like documentation, references, libraries, having easier integration guides, whatever can make life easy for people to manage this, integrate, and make, or rather, the point of the North Star for CX is to take away stress. They should not, the founder or the indie hacker should just plug in and not worry about anything payments. And that could be through a myriad of ways. So that's second. And third is just, which is social proof. Humans are humans. We trust things when we see, something all around us. So if we see, more people using a product, if you keep interacting with a brand, if you keep interacting with people behind the brand, you feel more comfortable. And part of being that is being more accessible. This is why I spend a lot of time on Twitter, Reddit, and LinkedIn. And I'm trying my best to be as accessible as possible so that even if today we don't have a brand, even if today we don't have a, public product, but you have me and you can reach out to me. And if you have any questions, clarifications, concerns, I'm more than happy to, address them for you.
So earlier you also mentioned about the whole building landscape changing because of AI. How are you using AI at Dodo Payments?
Honestly, we don't use AI as much as we would like. I know the tech team uses a bit, but for us, in terms of marketing and content, I haven't been personally very bullish on AI per se, because AI content does not have have a personality, it does not have a flair. And if you don't have a personality or flair, people are not able to recognize with your brand voice. And they can't recognize with the brand voice, you don't have a brand. And then it's become difficult to build trust. So for other businesses, maybe, AI can work well for SEO, for content generation, etc. It has not been good enough for us. So we generate most of the content by our own. Other than that, I personally use AI for a lot of brainstorming. Just chatting to Claude or GPT is super helpful. And we use some amount of AI for visual content creation. So, like creatives, videos, etc. That's where we use some amount of AI.
Last couple of minutes, while you're building this global vision for your company, founding team matters a lot. So how did you form the founding team? How did you meet your co-founders?
I was lucky to meet my co-founder. We met at Antler co-founder residency. That's run twice a year. So I was very lucky to meet Ayush. He also built a global gaming product called TunaFest. He had like a good chunk of international customers, could not monetize them. When he was, when his customers were paying by cards, he couldn't figure out taxes. So he just turned off international volume finally. Like he built a payment system, couldn't figure out taxes compliances, so just decided to turn off. So was lucky to meet someone who understood the problem, how painful it is, and was excited to build something together. And in terms of the team, I think we went for a route which is not very typical in today's startup parlance. Usually, startups will get like to hire a bunch of folks in founders office who do a bunch of things where the roles are not clearly defined. Like Ayush and I, we had very strong clarity on who we are looking, or rather, what roles do we need to fill, and what those roles will achieve for us to launch a product and then scale that. So in that way, we have a tech team, we have a growth person, tech and product are four folks, one in growth and two founders.
What do you typically look for in a person when you go to hire? What is your hiring philosophy?
So it varies from organization stage. So at larger orgs, you're looking for more maturity and stability. In early orgs, you're looking for hunger. If you're hungry, you'll figure it out. With AI, the learning curve is so, I don't know what's it like. It's so easy to learn new things, or rather, you can achieve steep learning curves with AI. You can just like learn so much. So as long as you have the hunger, you'd figure it out. How do you spot that hunger is a journey, is a discussion for another day.
So while we are talking about learning curve, what is your go-to learning method? How do you keep yourself updated with the latest trends and technologies?
One thing is I just cut out a lot of noise. I only focus on things that are relevant to me. And those relevant topics keep changing, right? So pick something that's relevant, go deep into it, then zoom out. Pick something else of relevance, then zoom in and then zoom out. If you're zoomed out all the time and try to learn a lot, you will learn a lot, but it will be scattered and you can't create a cohesive outcome out of it. So that's like the number one takeaway that I would give you. Second is, leveraging AI a lot, because instead of me scouring like hundreds of legal reports, tax treaties, etc., like AI really helps me summarize it and, at least point me to where I should go and read instead of skimming through 10,000 pages and then reaching the right page. So that's second. And third is have a network of people that you respect and you can rely on, because these are the people who will show you the mirror if you do something wrong. They will also guide you when you have dilemma, or rather, they'll guide you when you're not sure what to do and then resolve dilemmas for you.
What are the books that you recommend to our audience? Like, what are your favorite books?
I love reading. I do 50 plus a year. I'm not sure about this year though. Been slightly behind, but I'll take it. I would rather build my startup. But I would say Mahabharata is an easy answer. I've been lucky to read various renditions and versions. Gita, of course, is in some ways a manual for a lot of people to live. It is probably the best self-help book out there. In terms of startup world, I would say read 0 to 1, but read it with a bucket of salt, because it's very American centric. And while in microsas community is again very US centric, so you should be good. But don't try to apply those concepts in the Indian markets. You're not going to succeed. I would say, yeah, the other book I liked was Netflix No Rules Rules, because I think we have somehow reached a stage where it's you need to be nice all the time. And I think if you read the book, realize being right and taking the organization by taking tough decisions more important than being nice.
When you are not working, what are you doing?
Well, I'm married, so I spend a lot of time with my wife. I read. Actually, those are the only two things I'm doing.
One final question, and then we will close this. What is your top three or top one advice for anyone who wants to do a startup from India?
Number one is pick your market properly. If the market's not large enough, if there are not enough paying customers, you're not going to make money. And then you will start doubting yourself and your self confidence will be shook. So pick your market well. If you pick large markets, you can, if not be number one, you can be number two, number three and build like a great business. So be very careful about which market you pick. Spend the most amount of time figuring that out. The corollary to this point too is also be honest to yourself. Are you the right person for this or not? For me, going and building something in healthcare makes no sense. Or beauty. I don't care what night cream you use, what retinol, what I just don't care. And I can't build a business when I don't care about the products and the customer. And the third thing is there's a very common advice that build something that you have faced. I think that's not important. As long as you can empathize with the customer and the problem, that's good enough.
So I think with that, we will close today's session. Thank you so much for coming on Entrepreneurs Cafe and sharing your insights. Wish you all the best for your launch and your journey building a global company from India. And we'll be always rooting for you and looking forward to have you again on the podcast down the line and talk about all the learnings.
Yes, thank you so much, Nikunj. You asked some really good questions that forced me to think. So I really appreciate that. And hopefully we grow, progress, and then we have more to share with you in the next episode.